Dr. Ebony Stone, and this is the Black Woman in the Corner Office. Okay. Hello, and welcome to the Black Woman in the Corner Office podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ebony Stone, and I'm delighted that you decided to join us today. So today I have, as always, an amazing guest for you. I'm really excited about speaking to this particular guest because we have a lot in common. We
Yes,
haven't known each other very long,
right.
maybe just 6 months we've known each other. And I'm going to ask her to introduce herself. But my guest today is Dr. Janet Lockhart. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you, Dr. Ebony. I really appreciate that. Yeah, hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Janet Lockhart Jones. I'm the president and founder of Lockhart Jones Consulting, previously Project Partners Consulting Inc. So, we are a professional development, leadership development, and coaching firm based out of Northern California. I've had my business since 2004. And I actually started it because I wanted to be in control of my life. I wanted to be in
Mm,
control of my decisions. I didn't want to report to anybody else, right? I mean, I'd like to say that everything has been, all great and wonderful. But as you know yourself, any business owner, you're going to have highs and lows, etc. But it's been a good, really good journey. It really
yeah.
has.
I love so two things you said that I want to dig into when we get started here. One is that you wanted to be in control of yourself. I love that. So we're going to explore that a little more. And
Sure.
we're also going to explore the journey, right? I want to start with the journey because all too often I think we forget about the journey and we are
Yeah.
so focused on the destination that
Yeah.
we don't think about or we don't sit in the moment really and understand the journey. So I want to start there. I want to talk about your journey. Can you take us back to
Yeah.
the beginning? Maybe like the beginning of your professional career. Take
Yes.
us back to the beginning. Tell us what it was like as a black woman in the workplace and what your journey has looked like.
Great question. So, my journey into a professional career began not that long after high school. And I was in college working on my undergrad. And so I got a job actually with the United States Postal Service. My father worked there, my sister worked there. We're just a family of former postal folks, right? But I never was involved in moving mail. I was really on the computer side and the IT side of the house. And I actually spent the first 21 years of my professional career with the US Postal Service in
Mm,
different locations, etc. But the last, I would say, 5 years that I was there, I was in Six Sigma process improvement. And I got the opportunity to be one of 100 consultants who were really deployed all over the country to help individual districts. And some districts had as many as 10,000 people, but really to help them deploy and utilize Six Sigma process improvement tools. So that's really what started my foray into training because I was
okay.
responsible for training the leadership team. I was given, or I should say, allocated a team of 12 associate consultants to work with me and to, deploy the tools and techniques without. So during my tenure at the U.S. Postal Service, now things, of course, have changed, but I didn't. Well, I should say there was a sizable number of African American people in leadership roles, men
Nice.
and women.
Nice.
And although the Postal Service had its issues, but I never thought that I was being denied any opportunities. In fact, I started, as I said, like 3 years after high school. And then by the time I left, I had elevated to a substantial level in the organization. What I found interesting, though, is when I left the postal world and went into the corporate world, that's when things were a little different. You know what I'm saying?
I was just getting ready to say, so if you had a number of black people, right? Men and women in those spaces in leadership,
Yeah,
then that was very different. But I was just getting ready to say, how do you see that experience differing from an experience of someone who does not see that? Often we walk into the rooms and we are searching for someone, some familiarity in someone that looks like us, that may have had similar journeys as us, and we don't find those
right.
often in once you get so far in a corporate world. So how what do you see as the difference?
Yeah.
What is the difference between the 2?
Well, as I said before, the Postal Service has since changed, and
Mhm.
so the demographics, I would say, look very different.
Okay.
But when I came out of the Postal Service and went into corporate, I thought I was gonna pretty much see the same thing. You know, there were gonna be a lot of people that look like me, etcetera. So when I left the Postal Service, and by the way, people thought that I was leaving after 21 years. They thought I was just crazy. 21 years? Yeah, but I had so many years left until I could even qualify for retirement. And I knew that I wanted to do something different, right? So I
Is that, why would you leave one of those good government jobs?
Right, right.
Right.
That's what it was. Ooh,
Yes.
fast forward today,
Yeah.
government jobs are not that safe anymore, right? But
Right, right,
yes,
right.
why would you leave one of those good government jobs? And
Right,
really
right, right.
it's because I wanted more for myself, right? But anyway, when I left the government service and stepped into private industry, um, things were very, very different. And even to this day, Dr. Ebony, in 2025, I am usually the only person of color
Mhm.
in the space that I
Mhm.
am in, right?
Yes.
And that's a head trip.
Yes.
That's my trip. But I have learned to expect it, which is not a good thing. And then when I do see someone, I get all excited, like, woo, 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 come on, let's chat
Yes.
at break or let's chat at lunch. Um, But really, the question I want to ask is, but I don't, but the question I want to ask is, okay, out of this group of 30, how did you get here? How did
Yes.
you get the only one? Because a
Yes.
lot, and I say this because of a lot of the work that I do with a lot of clients nowadays, folks that come to these highly priced training sessions are often
Mm.
nominated by their superiors, they're nominated by other people. They may be identified as a high potential. So then I walk in this 25 or 30 folks who don't, none of whom look like me. And
A
I'm like, hmm,
and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I wanna say it's interesting, right? They're nominated, so highly qualified, right? You can't take anything away from the folks that you see. They deserve to be there. But
right.
there is another demographic, right? Hence the reason for this podcast. Black
Yeah,
women are literally the most educated demographic in the population. And
right.
so there are some other people that deserve to be there.
Oh,
And you
absolutely.
mentioned that you see them and you wanna have a conversation, but we often don't ask those questions. Um, and so I just wanna ask you, if you could ask that question, if you could ask someone, "How did you get here?" What do you think the answer would be?
I would suspect the answer would be I report to a manager who really likes me. I hate to
Mm.
say this. I report to a manager who really likes me, and I said I wanted to go. And so I was placed on the list.
Mm.
Now, I'm not saying that the person's not qualified. They
Correct.
don't deserve to be there. But what I'm saying is, and mind you, I have over 25 plus years of experience working with Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies and delivering leadership development solutions, multi-day events. And so I've had 25 years of observation data, if you will,
Yeah.
because it's obvious that there's something systemic happening that is precluding people who look like me from getting nominated to come to these types of training programs. And it has nothing to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So let me just throw that out the window right now. I've actually had a conversation. I won't mention the company, but I've had a conversation with a person who was managing a leadership development program inside of an organization. And this was a cohort of maybe 50 people.
Okay.
And I asked the question, why aren't there more African Americans in this cohort? Because in my work with that company, I've seen people that look like me, all over, right?
Right.
And so I asked the question, and the response I got back was, well, we had one person whose name was put forward. Now, this was a what do they call them? The senior resource, human resource
Yeah.
managers, or whatever the name of the position is. Tell me, well, we had one African American whose name was put forth by his manager, but we as HR just didn't really think that was a good look
Oh,
for
wow.
to
Wow.
represent that
Wow.
organization, which happened to be finance. So
Wow.
that's, I
So
would
it's
like to say that, well, no, I can't even say that. There's so many reasons why we, not just women, but men also, are overlooked for opportunities. Let me share this with one story with you. This
sure.
this was a work organization I was working with. I was actually employed by at the time. I'd stepped out of independent consulting, and this company had recruited me for a couple of months off of LinkedIn. So I
Mhm.
joined,
Okay.
stayed there for about, well, a total of almost 6 years, but about 3 years, a director role came up,
Okay.
right? And it was 3 positions. So I applied. It was in enterprise learning and development. So I applied
Okay.
and went through the interview process. And part of the interview process was that we had to put together a presentation
Mhm.
to the VP and her direct reports. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we were each given, all the applicants were given a different topic, or you could choose a topic. So I think I
Okay.
chose coaching or something like that.
Okay.
Um, I had been doing coaching, so I was well versed in coaching, and I had co-authored a manager as coach program for this particular organization. So I was really comfortable with the title, and the folks knew me
Mhm.
on the VP, senior VP. She really knew me because we had worked on some
Mhm.
other things together, and her direct reports knew of me. But in any case, the interview, I killed it. I mean, I showed up, showed out. It was the Janet on stage doing her thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
there
was
were
like, "They ain't
3
gonna never catch me slipping. I
right.
got this."
So it was 3 people, 3 positions. So one person who I worked with in the current organization, well, she got selected and she got told, and she, hey, I got this happy. All right. So the next day went by, the next day went by, the next day went by, and I didn't hear anything. So I
Mm.
reached out and asked the decision maker. I said, "Hey, I understand that." I'll just call her Betty. I understand that Betty got selected for one of the 3 positions. I said, we interviewed the same day, and I haven't heard anything. And she goes, "Oh, Janet, Janet, Janet. You
Mm.
know, I'm still in talks with my leadership team, all of whom reported directly to her, mind you, with my leadership team, trying to convince them that you are the right candidate. And by the way, Janet, you had the best, hands down, the best interview out of all the candidates. I was just amazed and taken aback by your speaking ability and your persuasiveness and how well you present yourself. I hadn't seen that side of you before. I said, "Well, that's what I do." And then she says, "Well, I must tell you that some of us think that the senior VPs might be a little scared of you." Scared of me? I said, "Well, what do you mean by that? I wouldn't be at their level." "Well, yeah, but you're just so you just come across as you're just so this and you're so that. I mean, it's like it's all good, but." So I said, "Okay, okay." So after that conversation, I thought about it.
Mhm.
Because, like I said, she was the one that would say yay or nay, and she knew
Mhm.
of me and she knew me because we worked on some
Yeah.
other things together.
Yeah.
So I had to ask myself, as a Black woman, how important is it for me to get this director level position? What will be expected of me after I got
Mm.
the position if I was successful? They're already telling me that senior VPs might be afraid of me. So I'm thinking, do I come across too assertive? I think she sort of made that phrase, too assertive, which I think in essence, the words that were wanted was too arrogant.
I think so the issue is because you are confident, it is seen differently than the
Yes,
confidence elsewhere.
yes.
And, Janet, I used to think, and I will tell you, I've worked in some places that are interesting. The place that I stayed the longest, I absolutely loved. I love the people that I worked with. Kind
Mhm.
of like you said, you in the postal service, right? I had a very unique situation. But I've been in environments where I thought I'll just do my work to the very best of my ability, and
Right.
doing my work to the best of my ability and shining will be enough, and it is not.
It's it's
It's
often
not
it's
enough.
often not, because the work that I did was heavily client facing, and I did a lot with customers for that particular organization. So I was known quite extensively throughout the customer realms. The other people that reported to her, I really didn't have much of a need to interact. But as I said, um, she knew me as a selecting official. But then this whole thing about, you know, the senior VPs being scared of me, I'm too assertive. No, like you said, I was confident. So here's what I want your audience to know. I had to make a decision and
Mm,
about whether or not it was even worth me pursuing
yeah,
this. Because if you're telling me even before you promote me into the role that some of your team think I come across as too, quote, assertive, the senior VPs might be afraid of me, AKA afraid of my confidence,
yeah,
you're not going to just walk all over me, then I asked myself, is it really worth it?
yeah.
The next day, I decided no, it wasn't worth
Mm.
it. So
Would you say that was a pivotal moment in your journey?
it was. It was a pivotal moment in my journey because I made up my mind I would never chase a position,
Mm,
nor would I chase money,
yeah,
nor would I ever apply for a position for which I did not think that I would be in the top five. And
yeah.
I would hold true to that throughout my career. And so I had to exercise because it's a role that I really, really wanted and I knew I was qualified for. But the BS had started even before I got the offer. So the next day, I just crafted a nice, kind thank you so much for the opportunity to interview for
Mm,
XYZ position. Um, I don't know what else I said. Something kind. I don't, I oh, this is what I said. I said, I want you to select the best person for the role. If it's not me, that's okay. However, in light of my conversation with you, where you're having to convince your direct reports that I might not be the right person because I may scare the VPs, then I withdraw my candidacy. The stress that was off that came off my shoulders when I withdrew was such a blessing.
Yes, it's interesting. What would you say? What advice would you have for, I'm gonna say, someone in that would maybe was in your position, applied for the role, they know they did well, and it's so funny. Before I ask you the question, it's so funny because the interview process you described is the exact interview process that I would take people through as the VP of Learning and Development. So I know exactly
Absolutely. So
what you
you
went
know
through.
what I'm talking about.
Exactly. So when you were describing it, you may have seen me smirk. I'm like, "Yep, that's it. That's the interview process." But what would you do for someone who's in that position, same outcome as you, but perhaps they don't feel like they can write that letter, right? Maybe they don't feel like they have the support that they need to walk away from a position like that. What advice would you have?
Well, when you say they don't necessarily feel like they have the support to walk away, my advice would be you don't necessarily need anybody's blessing or support. This is about you, and this is about your mental well being. Because if something looks like a duck, walks like a duck, acts like a duck, it's probably a duck. So if you have these signs, even before you are in the role, that this might not be for you. And
Mhm.
mind you, I was pursuing this as a promotion opportunity. I
Right,
could easily just stayed in my current role. But you really have to decide and ask yourself, what do you potentially gain if you successfully get into it? What do you give up?
yes, yes,
What do you give up? Because anytime you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else and vice versa. And
absolutely.
for me, if I stayed, because by the way, I did get a response, email response said, "Oh, Janet, we hadn't made up our minds and this and that." But at that point, I was done.
You're like,
I
"I made up my mind."
I made up my mind, and
Right,
that's
right,
what's
right.
so important. There will be tons of opportunities thrown your way, whether you're a young person, middle age or whatever. You will come across various opportunities. Not every opportunity is for you.
Yeah,
And with every opportunity, it's important for you to understand, for one to understand, what are you expecting out of this role? What are you expecting from the people with whom you will be working? And do you think they will be able to satisfy what you need in that particular role?
right. Oop,
You know,
okay.
so it's those conversations that we have to have with ourselves, because sometimes we accept roles thinking that they're A and they turn out to be totally B,
Yes,
right? But I
yes.
also think, Dr. Ebony, that it's about timing and opportunity.
Mm, yes.
And let me share with you a little story to tell
Yeah,
you what I
please,
mean by that.
please.
So I was working for a gentleman, technically brilliant, and I might be dating myself here, but this goes way, 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 way back. And I was working within a software systems organization.
Okay.
And during this time, we had relationships with large mainframe computer companies who always wanted to sell to us their mainframes. We're talking about multi-million dollar equipment here stuff.
Right.
So I reported to this leader who happened to be a black male,
Mm, okay.
um, which was quite interesting. Um, I even went through a time where my inter-office mail, that's when inter-office mail was being done, was being opened.
Oh.
And yes, how did I know it was open? Because I had people sending me stuff from Washington, D.C., et cetera. I know how they seal it. By the time I got it,
It was
it had
open.
been opened and looked at. So I knew that there was something going on.
Mm.
And I suspected it was my direct manager, this
Oh,
black.
okay.
So I decided that I was going to plant an item. And I put a note in there and said, if you're reading this, please know that I know that you're reading all of my mail and please stop.
Wow. Okay.
It never happened again. All my
Mm.
mail came to me just the way it should. Okay, fast forward. So this particular leader had been holding these meetings for several weeks and a few months with this large mainframe company. And I was essentially the black woman in the corner cubicle.
Okay.
These meetings would happen like weekly,
Okay.
and they were the most unorganized,
Mm.
mismanaged meetings. Now, I knew how to run meetings. I knew how to plan meetings. I knew how to do a Microsoft project document when we were, when we had projects. And most of the conversations with this company was through projects.
Okay.
But I could not get a word in edgewise.
Mm.
Um, I think there was a lot of ego at stake because it was his yay or nay that was going to get that company into the organization and thus a million or multi-million dollar sale. But it was embarrassing how the meetings were conducted. And
Mm.
so I would just sit around and observe the faces because, I'd been a trainer by then too, and I'm just observing faces
Right.
and, fake smiles and everything. And by the way, I was the only one in the room except for my boss who looked like us.
Okay. Okay.
Everybody else was a majority suits, ties, the whole 9 yards.
Mhm.
And he never asked for assistance. I believe I offered. No, I got it. I got it. I got it. After every meeting, the folks would get up and leave, and it was crazy. This is what I mean by timing and opportunity to your audience. Because just that alone, one may say, well, Janet, why did you say something? Why you didn't push harder? What? Because I knew how big his ego was. And I knew that he definitely did not want a female or a black female to overstep her bounds. And I didn't want to make him look bad. I mean,
Yeah.
he was a brother.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
didn't
Right.
make him look bad.
Right.
Um, Timing and opportunity. So there came a point where a meeting was upcoming, and he said, Janet, I want you to run this next meeting. I think I had like maybe 3 days' notice. I'm not
Mm.
going to be here, run the meeting, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. So I said to myself, Janet, this is your time. This is your opportunity. Not to try to make him look bad or anything, but I wanted to give our vendors a better experience.
Yeah.
I knew what the projects were. I put together a Microsoft project scale with some targeted dates. I had a formal agenda plan. I had some ground rules. And we went through that 60-minute meeting like clockwork. But interestingly, when they came in the room, they're like, well, I'll just say Bob. Where's Bob? I said, well, Bob's not going to be here today, but I will be running the meeting. Now, mind you, they'd seen me for months, the black woman in the corner cubicle,
Yeah.
attending these meetings, not saying anything. I said, I will be the one running the meeting today. By the way, here's the agenda. This is how today's meeting will be structured. Here's a Microsoft project document with the milestones that we have been discussing for the past month. Is there anything else you want to add to the agenda before we get started? Blah, 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 blah. I control the entire meeting. At the end of the meeting, hey, any questions, anything anybody wanted to add? Let's set the date for the next meetings and some high level agenda items. We did that. All of them got up. Everyone went into their pocket, pulled out their business card. Oh, Janet, thank you. This, it was just like
Yes,
somebody has dropped down. It's the
yes,
black woman in the corner office.
yes.
So at future meetings, it, I didn't even have to say to my boss what I did and how I did it. They must have done all the talking
Yep.
because at the next meeting, Janet, you got the agenda, you got the project schedule ready, you run the meeting. I didn't even have to ask to do that.
You
That
provided an experience for them that they were looking for.
Yes. As I said, I wanted to give them a better experience. I mean, they were spending millions and millions of dollars with us. And so they, of course, couldn't push back on him. And I know that, right?
Mm,
Timing and opportunity.
absolutely.
So that actually changed the relationship that he and I had.
Mm,
Because, see, he realized I wasn't out to cut him down. I wasn't out to, go behind his back. I
I'm
want,
part of the team.
hmm?
I'm part of the team. I wanna
Yeah,
help
I'm
you.
part of the team. And I suspect for some reason he didn't get that. Maybe he was intimidated. I don't know. But I don't know what the issue was. But and so he just wanted to box me out of those meetings, or maybe he didn't think I knew enough. I don't know.
Mm,
But sometimes instead of, and this is what I'll say to your audience, instead of jumping this gun or thinking that I'm being treated unfairly, be patient, wait for the
mm,
opportunity. And see, here's the thing, when I got that opportunity to, let's just say, show up and run the meetings the way that I knew they should be run, that was not a time for me to get ready. At every meeting I had attended prior, that was me getting ready in silence.
yes,
So, the old adage, you stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
yes,
So I was ready. I just didn't sit in those meetings and stuff was just going in. I either physically and mentally took notes of all the previous discussions, what was happening, what were the key decisions that had to be made. So I could talk from an intelligent point of view when I was running the meetings.
yes. Janet, what you did, I think is so important. This is how I view what you did. You took energy that could have been spent being frustrated. It could have been spent being angry and irritated about what was happening. And you channeled that
Yes.
into building what you needed to
Yeah.
leverage your skill set at the proper time.
Yes.
And something you said, a few moments ago, you said that you told yourself, I will stop chasing a title. All of my mentees and everybody I have ever coached would probably say those exact words to you because I believe wholeheartedly you cannot chase a title. If you chase a title, and if you chase dollars, if that is your goal, you will find yourself tremendously disappointed and frustrated at every turn for a number of reasons.
Absolutely.
One, titles change, right?
Titles
The
change.
ball moves,
Yep.
the measuring stick moves constantly. But if you are doing exactly what you did, if you are building skill sets, if you are gathering information, if you are constantly assessing that information and understanding what is going on, you can execute at such a high level that you
Absolutely.
don't have to chase the title. You don't have to chase the opportunity. If you're patient enough, it'll come to you.
Right. And every disappointment is an opportunity
Yes.
for learning. Every disappointment is an opportunity um, for growth. I will also say that it's important for you to know your worth as
And
well.
then add tax, as they say.
Exactly, and then add tax, and even that tax if
Yeah,
necessary.
yeah,
So let me share a little bit about that because
yes.
um, I was applying for a role
Mhm.
with an organization,
Okay.
and I had went through at least 8 to 9 different individual roles over a course of
Mhm.
2.5 months.
Okay.
Now, the person with whom I'd be reporting to, he and I were getting progressively close. He was talking to me about the role and how he thought I would fit in and this and that. But I had to talk to all these people because that was the protocol. So we would have one on one schedules and this and that. 2.5 months this went on. And after seemingly I talked to the last person, he tells me, I think this was like a Wednesday. He tells me, Janet, I hate to say this, but there's been a new person added to the queue.
Mm.
Now, mind you, this had been a position vacant for over a year, right?
Okay.
And the position what reported to him, so he was desperate to fill it, but the skill set that he needed that I had was so rare.
Mm.
When he identified me and my background on LinkedIn, he immediately reached out. We had an initial conversation, and he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna put your name forward to be interviewed by A B C D E F G H I J." Okay, okay. 2.5 months. Everybody I was supposed to interview with was done, and I had expected by now to have an offer because his feedback, according to him, about me from everybody was great. So then internally, somebody says, "Oh, there's an internal candidate." Mind,
Oh,
yes, mind you, this position had been vacant for over a year. This internal candidate had been there at least 6 months, and now, after my 10th or 11th interview, they want to now vet this internal candidate. And it was a person who didn't look like me. Okay. So I was like, and mind you, I wasn't actively looking. They went out perusing LinkedIn, and he thought that I and my background was a perfect fit for the specific niche that they were looking for. So they were after me, right?
okay.
So when he told me this, I kept my cool. It's like, okay, I understand. I understand. You do what you have to do. So I thought about it that evening. And so that next morning, I sent him an email. Dear, I call him Bob too. Dear,
Yes.
I really appreciate the opportunity to interview with the 8, 9, 10 people whom I've had to interview. From your feedback alone,
Yes.
from them to you, all those interviews went quite well. I want you, just like I told the other folks about the director role, I want you to hire the best possible person for the role, even if it's not me. I said, but after 2.5 months, you now wish to vet an internal candidate. Great. However, if I do not have an offer by the end of today, I am revoking my candidacy.
Mm.
I told myself, and even talked to my husband, and he said, that's crazy. If they don't know by now, after 10, 12 interviews, 2.5 months, then forget them.
Right.
So I
Absolutely.
crafted the email and I said, um, I would like to have the role. It sounds challenging. I know I'm a great fit, but I'm not going to sit around and let you guys string me along anymore. Either I have an offer by the end of today or my
Okay.
candidacy, my application is revoked.
Yes. What
I have
happened?
an offer by the end of that day.
I love that. So, Janet, I let me tell you, I'm taking away gems from our conversation, right? I love what you just said about you got to know your value, but not just know it. You gotta let other people know it. Make
Yes.
people aware of
Yeah.
what your value is, and let them know that you will respect my value, or
Yeah.
I will go where it is respected. That's
Exactly.
number one. I've also learned about patience and opportunity, and we absolutely agree there.
Yeah.
And I have learned for sure that not every workplace is the same. I knew that, but that there are places where, the black women in the corner office, corner cubicles, not in the corner, out in the call center, are not necessarily alone. And there are places where
Oh, yeah.
we are valued, and where there are lots of us. But I want to ask a question. There's so much I want to ask you. Like, I gotta have you back because we're not even getting ready to hit on. I don't
Oh,
think that we will even hit on what I learned about you when we first met. I don't even think we'll get there, but
yes.
I
Yes.
want our audience to hear about that. So if you will come back, I would love to have you
Oh,
back.
absolutely.
I
It'd be
love it.
my
I love
pleasure.
it. So I want to ask you two questions. I want to make sure we have time to talk about where the shift to your entrepreneurial pursuits happened. I know you told us the year, but where in your career did that happen?
Mhm.
Um, and what it looks like now so that people can get in touch with you. So
Yeah.
tell us that, and then I got one more question for you.
Okay, absolutely. So the entrepreneurial spirit, let's just say, hit me when the company that I had left the Postal Service to go work for, when the economy was, this is sort of like maybe early 2000s or something like that,
Mhm.
and the economy had tanked due to world events. And
Okay.
so what happened was they felt they were compelled to lay all of us, their words, not mine, highly paid consultants and trainers off. But they
Mm.
offered some of us to come back as 1099 employees,
Okay.
as an independent contractor. And so, and what I found quite interesting, I was the only African American that they asked to come back as a 1099.
Mm.
Um, so again, that's sort of like, my first foray into, oh, things are not the same as they were in the postal
Right.
service. But anyway, so I came back as a 1099. So I said to myself, well, Janet, if you're doing this work still for this company, but as a 1099, why don't, and they're keeping most of the revenue, why don't you go out and get your own clients
Go do it for
and do
yourself.
the same thing?
Yeah.
So that's when, okay, I kept doing it. I contemplated, and it was like 2003. So in 2004, that's when I incorporated. And I
Okay.
started Project Partners Consulting Inc. And I went out and did some marketing and branding, and I got some small contracts, some medium-sized contracts where I can keep the majority of the money now because it was coming
Mhm.
into Project Partners. I still didn't put all my eggs in one basket. I still worked as a 1099,
Yeah.
servicing their companies and allowed that revenue to fuel building my business.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that's the business model that I maintain today. I
Okay.
still subcontract, but and use that revenue to fuel my business of training and coaching and consulting. And it works out brilliantly.
Yeah.
And it also provides a level of a protection, right? Because what's happened to small businesses like with COVID or with this and that? Some businesses went out of businesses and will never recover.
Yeah.
Well, I
You've
didn't have,
diversified. You've
right.
used your
You
talent to diversify.
diversify, exactly. But I still had work, maybe not as much. Plus the fact, because of my early career, I was doing a lot of virtual training as well. And so when companies were just trying to pivot to virtual synchronous live training,
Mhm.
well, I already had the expertise in it. I was
Mm.
an expert on WebEx and an
Yes.
expert on Adobe Connect, becoming an expert on Zoom. I was an expert on Saba Centra, which was one of the earlier virtual platforms as well.
Yeah.
So I was able to get virtual work at a high level of comfort because I'd been there, done that. Also, that gave me the opportunity because many companies were grasping, well, okay, how are we going to transition our
Yes.
in-house face-to-face or our in-person training opportunities to virtual?
I
So
actually
I
lived that in 2020. I was a vice president of learning and development
Mhm,
and had to transition
absolutely.
tens of classes. I was gonna say hundreds. I don't know if we got to
Mhm.
hundreds, but close, right?
Yeah,
Of classes from in person to virtual. So you, I wish I'd have known you then.
absolutely.
I
And
would have tapped you for some advice.
yeah, well, this is what I did because I knew that being a face-to-face instructor, uh, being a virtual instructor is 100% different than being a face-to-face instructor.
Yes, it is.
I've known some brilliant face-to-face, in-person instructor that can do nothing with virtual. And I'm
Correct.
not just talking about the platform. I'm talking about the engagement and asking
Yeah.
questions. They just don't get it. So I launched a virtual training masterclass
Yes, I love it.
and I charged, I think it
Yeah.
was like, I think I charged like $1,100
Mm,
for I think it was maybe a 6 session option to help people become more adept and more capable at running live virtual training inside their, for their organizations,
yes.
right? So that was an opportunity that I, as the president of Project Partners Consulting, now running as Lockhart Jones Consulting, that was an opportunity I took. But I would have never done that had I not stepped out, what took that 1099 opportunity in 2003 when the company I was working for changed their business model and then launched Project Partners.
Yes.
So that's how I
So
started to the entrepreneur world.
so if people wanna get in touch with you now, how do they reach you?
Oh, absolutely. You can see straight on the screen, lockhartjonesconsulting.com, lockhartjonesconsulting.com. I'm all over Facebook, Janet Lockhart Jones. I am on LinkedIn, Janet Lockhart Jones. I'm on YouTube and Instagram, Janet Lockhart Jones or Dr. Janet Lockhart Jones. Very easy to find me, but reach out.
Yeah.
I enjoy having these coaching conversations with Black women, with with Black men, because our
Yeah.
brothers are in very similar situations, right?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
And I work with individuals, I work with organizations on this type of stuff, as well as other traditional leadership, influence, and organization development issues.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So listen, we have got to have you back because there's a whole nother conversation that we need to
Oh,
have.
girl, yes,
A whole
yes,
other conversation that I
yes.
think our audience can benefit from. So definitely when we finish up here, I'll be talking to you about coming back to have that conversation. So you guys stay tuned for more with Dr. Janet Lockhart Jones. But before we get out of here, I've got one last question for you. And that question is this. Let's say we decide tomorrow to make your life a movie. What would we call that movie and who would play you?
Forever rising,
Ooh, now that's strong.
forever rising.
Forever Rising. Forever Rising. Yes.
And I
And
say that because, yeah, I mean, being a caregiver, suffering from
mm,
cancer myself,
mhm,
mental health challenges in the
mhm.
past. I mean, overcome so many things, yet I continue to rise. The Leadership Experience Tour, which of course we're both a part of,
Yes,
is another step on that ladder
yes.
of Janet rising.
I love that.
Yeah,
Forever Rising.
yeah,
Would
and
you choose
I
somebody that would play you?
I'm sorry?
Do you know who you would want to play you or no?
Famous person?
It doesn't have to be.
If I'll pick this person,
Okay.
Regina King,
Oh,
because
yes,
watching her play the many roles that she has, she exudes strength and resilience in speaking her truth
yes,
and calling a spade, telling
yes,
it like it is,
yes,
and being unapologetically Black.
yes, yes,
So,
and I think even in those roles that she's playing, she's pulling from real life
yes,
experience. Yes,
yes,
absolutely. I love that. I love Regina King, by the
yes,
way. So, Forever Rising,
ever.
Regina King as the star, I can see that. I can
Yes.
see that, Dr. Janet. I can see it.
Thank
I love
you.
it. I love it. I love it. So listen, like I said, we will have you back. I want to thank you, thank you for being here and
Oh,
sharing. I hope that my audience has taken away persistence. They've taken away patience. They've taken away constantly growing. They've taken away knowing their own value and making sure people respect that value. And I
yes.
hope that they will reach out to you uh, and just continue the conversation.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
with that being said, you guys, we're gonna get out of here. And until next time, keep spreading that black girl magic on everything you do. I'll
That's
see you.
right. Black girl man. Continue rising.
And
Thank
you're
you.
right. Thank you. Bye, guys.